It's a good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy, Millsy, my hometown commander, and we are back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I brew my version 1.0 deck list of the commander in front of us on my quest to outbrew your favorite Magic channel. Well, we put the poll up on the channel asking you guys what Commander Master Precon you wanted to see first, and I was not surprised that Eldrazi Unbound was the deck that won. It's not surprising because this commander is kind of gross, and as someone who loves a good challenge and has a lot of fun, this commander definitely caught my eye. Now, I have yet to brew an Eldrazi deck for the channel. In fact, I haven't really brewed an Eldrazi deck for myself, really, ever. It's just not an archetype that I liked the concept of, mainly because it was in colorless, and this is gonna sound so dumb, but there wasn't a payoff I really liked. That's gonna sound terrible, but we have it now in Zhulodok Void Gorger, the commander of our Eldrazi Unbound Precon deck, a 7/4 for 6 Eldrazi. It says color spells you cast from your hand with mana value 7 or greater have Cascade. Alright, well, adding Cascade to Eldrazi spells wasn't necessarily the thing I thought they would do, but it is certainly something we can take advantage of. For people who aren't aware of what Cascade is, when you cast a spell with Cascade, you immediately, or when the trigger resolves, you're going to flip the top cards of exile the top cards of your library until you hit a non-land card that costs less mana to cast. You have two choices. You can cast it without paying its mana cost, or you can put everything back on the bottom. So you can cast it if you want to, but if you don't like it, you can always put it back on the bottom with the rest of the cards. So the way Zhulodok is going to work is when it's out in the battlefield and we cast a spell with 7 or greater, the spell is going to go on the stack. We get 2 triggers of Cascade on the stack. We have to do both of those versions of Cascade first before the original spell we cast hits the battlefield. It's something that's for some people is tough to understand, but the 2 Cascade triggers and whatever we cast is going to go onto the battlefield first before the thing we originally cast. As long as you can keep that in the back of your head, this deck isn't going to get too hard. But again, Cascade can be an absolute mess. Now, it's only color spells we cast from our hands. We can't go on like a Cascade train like you can with other Cascade commanders. It has to be from our hands. So that's going to help us stop the fun that is this deck. So this is my attempt at updating the Precon, making it feel right. I tried to make this as Eldrazi heavy as possible. You're going to notice as we go through, there's a few things that aren't really Eldrazi focused, but I think they just feel right in a deck that my commander says, hey, if you cast a colorless spell, mana value 7 or greater, here's a free Cascade. But I tried to center it as much as I could in Eldrazi. I actually don't think that the mana base of this deck was super terrible in the Precon. There's a couple really cool things with the Tron lands that I didn't really think about. I think the obvious miss was Eye of Ugin. It just should have been in there. If this is a deck that cares about Eldrazi, Eye of Ugin should have been in there. I know it wasn't in there because it's a very expensive land and they probably want to reprint it somewhere else. But come on, if you're going to build a deck about Eldrazi, you got to put in the Eldrazi land, which is, in my opinion, Eye of Ugin, or in most people's opinions. So, colorless Eldrazi spells you cast cost 2 less to cast. That's a flat 2 less to everything. 7 and tap, search your library for a colorless creature, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle. Don't go get anything you want. But that flat 2 less to cast is going to help a ton. And then Sanctum of Ugin seems pretty fun. Just adds a colorless to your mana pool, but it says whenever you cast a colorless spell with CMC 7 or greater, you may sacrifice it. If you do search your library for a colorless creature, reveal it, put it to your hand, and shuffle. So the first time we cast one of those big ones, sack this, put something else into our hand to cast later. Now remember, anytime we cast a spell and we have triggers that trigger off us casting a spell, we choose what order they go onto the stack, but of course our opponents can respond and their things will go off first. So the cool part about Sanctum of Ugin is if you want to see, like let's say you put one of the big Eldrazi Titans at 11 or 12 onto the stack and you kind of want to see what you hit first before you do this ability, well, if Cascades go off first and then do Sanctum of Ugin. But if you kind of want to make sure you get something into your hand to continue your turn, do the Ugin first, get it into your hand, and then go cascading, because you'll end up shuffling and kind of hopefully reloading the top of your deck for that. Again, I think there's a lot of fun lands. We do actually get the wastes in the Precon, which is great, because the wastes were getting decently expensive, being they were only printed in, I believe, Oath of the Gatewatch for a long time. So I think they were getting decently expensive. It's a good spot to get them. Again, I thought the rest of the deck had pretty decent land choices. I added the workshop because we're playing the other three, so the workshop actually does end up helping us out if we can see all four Urza's lands. You could obviously just cut this for another waste if you want to, because these are the three that really work together. This just works with the more of them that you have. So, these two together only get you 2, unless you have Fervor Artifacts, then it gets you 3, whereas, these are the 3, right? You're trying to pair together more. Just one enchantment, and that's Ugin's Mastery. This is one of those new cards. Whenever you cast a colorless creature spell, manifest the top card of your library. So we put it on the battlefield face down. It's 2/2 creature. We can turn it face up at any time for its mana cost of its creature. The bad part about Ugin's Mastery, of course, is whenever we cast that creature, it doesn't count as being from our hand, so we're not going to get Zhulodok's ability. And it's not a cast trigger, I don't believe. It's a special action, so I don't even think we get a cast trigger off of it. That's a ruling someone else can figure out. It doesn't really matter for the purpose of this. What matters is whenever you attack with a creature with power 6 or greater, you can turn a face-down creature you control face up. That is really important, because we have a lot of big Eldrazi that we definitely don't mind cheating in off of attacking. So I like it. This is another great choice for a new card for the deck. I think it fits really well. 36 artifacts, and that's because we don't have any ramp, right? Because we're in colorless, so most of our good card draw options are gone. Most of our good ramp options are gone, so we're relying on mana rocks that are honestly really efficient. I think the one thing I've always felt about Eldrazi decks is their ability to tap for loads of mana is insane. You look at things like Thran Dynamo, 4 mana to tap for 3 colorless. We now get 3 colorless every turn. Worn Power Stone taps for 2. You could see these definitely add up. But there are some colorless artifacts I really, really enjoy. Chroma's Memorial, great card. Creatures we control have flying, first strike, vigilance, trample, haste, and protection from black and red. This could potentially help us end the game by giving these big Eldrazi boys coming in haste and flying and trample, making them even harder to block and get around. Chromatic Orrery, a card that I really love. It's 7 mana, so it is going to count for our commander's ability. It comes in, immediately taps for 5 mana, and for 5 mana we can draw a card for each color among permanents we control. Don't really care about that. Again, a 7 mana rock that taps for 5 that will trigger our commander is important. Commander's Plate, creature gets +3/+3 and has protection from each color that's not in your commander's color identity. We put this on our commander, and our commander has hexproof from any colored spell, and cannot be blocked by any colored permanent. So, obviously that makes our commander very hard to deal with now that it's unblocked. Basically unblockable in most scenarios. Darksteel Monolith, 8 mana. This is another one of the new cards. Indestructible. Once per turn, you can play 0 rather than pay the mana cost for a color spell you cast from your hand. This is very good because, again, a couple of our Eldrazi are pretty expensive, which means if we're starting our Cascade stack off of our commander at 12 and we paid 0 for it, that's major profit. So I love this. Again, great example of another new card, and I think this card is going to see itself being paid in other decks as well, but probably more colorless focus heavy decks, but still, what a good card. Dreamstone Hedron, 6 mana to tap for 3 and pitch it to draw 3. Again, I like this mainly as a cascade target when we're cascading off of other things. I don't know that I want to cast this for 6 mana for my hand. I don't mind cascading into it, though, because it's just extra mana. Not all of our mana rocks are going to be winners, but I don't mind trying something like this out, and it is included in the Precon. Everflowing Chalice, the more mana we put into it, the better. And then it taps for a bunch of mana depending on how many times we kicked it. Again, this is a great card. The more mana we have, the bigger we can make the Chalice. Expedition Map can go get us a land card of our choice, which is great because it can go get us Eye of Ugin. So that's what makes Expedition Map so good in a deck like this. Forsaken Monument, here's an example of a card that was made probably purposely for Eldrazi decks, and we get to let it shine here. Colorless creatures get +2/+2, which is going to be every single one of our creatures. Whenever you tap a permanent for colorless mana, add an additional colorless mana. This takes every mana rock we have and adds an extra one. Then whenever we cast a colorless spell, we gain 2 life. Forsaken Monument is so good. I love this card. It came out in Zendikar Rising, and it fits so well again here. Hedron Archive, 4 mana to tap for 2, again, or tap 2, sack it, draw 2 cards. You'll see a lot of these really good colorless mana artifacts can draw you cards if need be. Hedron Matrix. Creature gets +X/+X, where X is its mana cost and equip 4. This feels great on any of our Eldrazi because they're just going to be huge. Give them a buff and hit them swinging. Helm of the Host seems like a really fun time. We can put this on our commander and potentially get more Cascade off of our spells, or we put this on some of our Eldrazi that have ETB abilities, or some of our Eldrazi that are just going to be tough to deal with because the token copy is non-legendary. So that's even better. And the token gains haste. So the cool part about this is if you're using something like Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger, you move to combat, get a second Ulamog, attack 2 different opponents, each of them mill exile 20. So Home of the Host could be really good. We're playing Herald's Horn and Urza's Incubator to try to drop the cost of our Eldrazi spells. Again, we have non-Eldrazi creatures in the deck. But again, most of them are Eldrazi, so we need to play that a way to try to reduce them possible. Caldra Complete. So when we cast it, it's going to come in with a 0/0 Germ. That's what Living Weapon is. And that Germ would get +5/+5 and that soup of abilities. But what we can also do is just attach this to another creature and give those buffs. But the cool part about Caldra Complete is it will come with that little token. So we'll kind of get a creature when it comes down. Lightning Greaves to give our commander protection, or to give any Eldrazi we want to be able to attack the turn it comes in, haste and shroud. Lithform Engine just feels right. We can technically copy one of the Cascade triggers with the top ability. The second ability could copy one of our spells, and the bottom ability could technically completely copy any permanent that we play. So Lithform Engine feels really good. And again, like I said before, Colorless decks always seem to just have a ton of mana at a certain point in the game, so we're going to have mana to pay for it. Mazevine Tome, I like, can scry, get us through the deck, and then whenever it gets to 3 or 4, for 4 more page counters, we exile it and gain 4 life. I like the Scry. Scry can help us considering we have other ways to draw cards, or we can just draw a card with it. I like it. It works. It could help us. It helps us early game. It helps us late game. Mindstone, pretty classic choice here. Tap for one and a tap, sack it to draw. You see this, Hedron Archive. Some of these guys are very similar. Mirage Mirror can become a copy of any other artifact, creature, or enchantment or land until end of turn. This is great because we could make this a copy of... we can make it a copy of Eye of Ugin if we wanted to. I believe it would get around. I don't think it would get around the legendary rules, so we probably can't. But we can make this copy of a lot of other fun things, and I think that becomes important. Make this a copy of Urza's Incubator, reduce our spells. Make this a copy of Soul Ring or Thran Dynamo for a bunch of mana. I think there's a lot of things we can do with Mirage Mirror. Mithril Coat, giving a creature indestructible. It seems pretty darn good. Mystic Forge allows us to look at the top card of our library at any time, but we can cast artifact spells and colorless spells in the top of our library. That's great because, one, this will always let us see what's on top of our deck so that when we start this Cascade train with our commander, we might potentially know what's coming. But two, if, let's say we're going to play some massive spell, and we have some little thing on top of our deck, we could play it from the top of our deck and not have it be one of our Cascade triggers when we go to play our big thing. Nev's Disc, Neverinul's Disc is a board wipe. It's just good to have a board wipe. And we have one main one that's better, but it's not bad to ever have a second one. Portal Phyrexia just seems like a absolute ton of fun. Comes in, each opponent sacks 3. Beginning our upkeep, we get a creature back from a graveyard on the battlefield. We can get ours back, or we can get theirs back. I love Portal Phyrexia, and again, it's so fun that we get to cast it and get double Cascade if we cast it from our hand. Shadow Spear, giving a creature trample and lifelink. This is great because so many of our Eldrazi are just huge. So Shadow Spear is going to help us get some damage and gain some life. Soul Ring. Soul Talisman seems fun because when we cascade into it, we can cast it, of course, for free and get it down as a kind of a second copy of Soul Ring. So I like that. Stronic Resonator, again, for the same thing as Lithform's top ability. We can copy the Cascade trigger. We could copy cast triggers. So there's a lot of things we can do with Stronic Resonator. Again, things like Ulamog exiling things when you cast it are the things we'd want to copy. Immortal Sun. Players can activate Planeswalkers' loyalty abilities. This can hurt us because we're playing a couple Planeswalkers. But the big thing we care about is the beginning of our draw step, we draw another card. Spells we control cast, one less to cast. And then creatures we control +1/+1, so good. But for trying out the One Ring, I think you could take the One Ring out, but it's great use, great course of draw, and it protects us. That first turn comes down. Thought Vessel taps for 1, gives us that no maximum hand size. We talked about Thran Dynamo, 3 mana every turn for just a 4-mana investment. Vanquisher's Banner, +1/+1 to all of our Eldrazi. At least that's the goal. Then where we cast an Eldrazi creature spell, we draw a card. Vidalcan Aura, giving us the ability to cast our things at flash speed. This could be fun to get down on our opponent's turns, and then be able to attack with them when it gets back to our turn. Whisper Silk Cloak, giving something can't be blocked and Shroud, so that could be great for one of our big Eldrazi to hit in for free. Pardon me. Wondrous Crucible. Permanents we control have Ward 2, which is great. Helps stop our opponents from targeting a little bit. At the beginning of your end step, mill 2, then exile an online card at random from your graveyard, copy it. You can cast the copy without paying its mana cost. We could potentially get something back that was put into the graveyard. And then Worn Power Stone comes in tapped and taps for 2. So you can see lots of mana artifacts, lots of utility artifacts. Again, this is the kind of thing that makes one of these decks kind of fun. Well, let's get into the spells because there aren't too many of them. And in fact, a couple of these surprised me at how useful they're going to be. Desecrate Reality, one of the new spells. 7 mana for each opponent. Exile up to 1 target permanent that players controls with an even mana value. And for the purposes of this spell, 0 is even, even though 0, of course, is not even. And then if you have at least 3 colorless mana that was spent to cast this spell, return a permanent card with an odd mana value from your graveyard to the battlefield. So that's a great mix of get rid of our opponent's things and get something back. And of course, that would do the cascade from our commander. Titan's Presence. Additional cost to cast, we can reveal a colorless creature from our hand and exile a target creature if its power is less than or equal to the revealed creature's power. So we show a big boy Eldrazi in our hand and just nuke anything. Then a Warping Wall seems kind of interesting. Exile a target creature with power or toughness 1 or less, counter target sorcery, or create a 1/1 that could sack for a mana. I think this is just probably not good enough, but hey, you never know when it might come in handy. What is it hit with 1 toughness or 1 power? Probably more than you think it does, but I mean, hey, you never know when Warping Wall could come in handy. Again, I probably would cut it for something else, but it was in the Precon, and it's an Eldrazi spell, right, from Oath of the Gatewatch, and I thought, why not include it? Okay, well, probably our favorite spell in the deck as far as sorceries, as far as non-creature spells go, because this is probably one of the best Eldrazi spells of all time, and all its dust. Each player sacrifices all permanents they control that are 1 or more colors. So every colored permanent is sacrificed. Doesn't matter about indestructible, hexproof, shroud, doesn't matter. They get sacrificed. You get around all of it, and you're just going to ruin a board with this card. This card is very tough to deal with because you end up just losing everything that you could use to come back into the game, and hopefully this could be that final push we need to either completely equalize the board and push ahead, or clear the way for us to win the game. Calamity of the Titans just seems like a really fun card. 6 mana, says additional cost to cast a spell, reveal a colorless creature from our hand, just kind of like Titan's Presence. Exile each creature and planeswalker with mana value less than the revealed card's mana value. So we can be smart with this. We can pick something big and nuke everything below it. We can pick something in the middle and nuke everything below it. I think this is just kind of interesting. If we have lots of Eldrazi in our hand, we can kind of pick and choose and have some fun. Environmental Sciences will get us a waste put into our hand and gain 2 life. Gruesome Slaughter, until end of turn. Colors creatures control gain tap. This creature deals damage equal to its power to our creature. Basically, we can just use our big Eldrazi's to knock things out. Instruction to Prophecy. Scry 2 and draw, not bad for 3 mana. And then Rise of the Eldrazi, another one of those big spells in the Precon. Can't be countered, hopefully. I mean, it's good it can be countered for 12 mana. Destroy target permanent. Target player draws 4 cards. Take an extra turn after this one. Exile it. I mean, obviously, we want to draw the 4 cards ourselves and take an extra turn. But this will cascade off our commander. I mean, this is just a great spell for what we're trying to do. And this comes in the Precon. Well, Let's take the slog through the creatures because some of these are pretty fun. Abstruse Archaic, I believe, is new in the deck. 4 mana, 3/4. Vigilance, 1 tap, copy targeted activated or triggered ability you control from a colorless source. You may choose no card to copy. This can copy our commander's. I believe. I believe it can copy one of the cascades. Again, I'm not 100% sure on that, but I know it will copy some other things. Artisan of Kozilek. Whenever you cast it, we can return target creature card from our graveyard to the battlefield, and it has Annihilator too. Annihilator is a fun ability that they do not use anymore, but whenever you attack, defending player sacrifices 2 permanents. Annihilator is super broken. It is a triggered ability, so we could copy it with the Archaic and our, Lithoform and our Strionic Resonator. Bane of Balaged, I don't know why this was always one of my favorite Eldrazi, whether it was the picture, I don't know. But whenever it attacks, defending player exiles 2 permanents they control. Again, Annihilator 2, but for exile. I mean, just a great card. Breaker of Armies. All creatures able to block Breakers of Armies do so. This seems like a weak card for 8 mana, but the cool part about this card is that you attack this, you attack somebody with this guy, and then all your other creatures, and none of your other creatures can be blocked, because Breaker of Armies has to be blocked by all the creatures they can control that can block. So I like this, whether you want to get a big creature and knock somebody out and do Breakers of Armies with it, or you just want to force somebody to have everything they control blocked with Breakers of Armies and take things out that you want to take out. I like it, and hopefully we can cascade into it. Cityscape Leveler, here's a great example of a non-Eldrazi card in this deck that does a ton of work. Whenever we cast it, or whenever it attacks, destroy up to 1 target non-land permanent, its controller gets a tapped Power Stone, and we can unearth it back for 8 mana as well. I love it. It's a big boy. It has trample. We can cascade into it and still get its ability, and it's not a bad card to cascade from off our commander's ability. Conduit of Ruin. Whenever we cast it, we can search our library for a colorless creature card with CMC 7 or greater, reveal it, shuffle it, and put it on top. And then whenever this creature spell you cast with, the first creature spell we cast is 2 less each turn. I love it. Conduit of Ruin's a great card. It reduces our spells and gets us the big boys. Desolation Twin. Jeez, me and the mic today, guys. I'm so sorry. Whenever we cast a spell, create a 10/10 Eldrazi creature token. So if the Eldrazi token comes in first, and then this comes in Manafall, and we could pair like a Warstorm Surge with this, right? Endless One, X mana, X +1/+1 counters. This works great with our commander because remember the way that mana value is determined is the value of X on the stack. So we could put 7 mana into the Endless One, and it will cascade or as much as we want. Flayer of Loyalties from the deck, 10 mana, and I just realized I forgot to mention the diamonds that you see up in the upper right hand corner. We saw them on Sol Ring here. You'll see them on every new printing of Sol Ring. You specifically have to use colorless mana for that, right? Whereas that others you're generic. But again, in this deck, we're only getting colorless mana, so it's not going to matter. Whenever we cast this, gain control of target creature until end of turn, untap that creature. Until end of turn has base power on top of his 10/10 and gains Trample, Annihilator 2, and Haste. That is a great ability. Annihilator 2 on its own, which is killer. Again, Annihilator is such a good ability, and it has Trample. This is such a fun Eldrazi. I mean, to me, it goes up there as one of the better ones we have access to, because making that thing into a 10/10, I mean, if it has flying, great. If it has other abilities, great. You're just going to hit somebody. Hangerback Walker makes a ton of sense in a deck like this. It comes in with counters. When it dies, you get Thopters for the counters it had. And again, you could probably get 8 mana, get you a 4/4 Hangerback and our commander's ability. So I like it. It that betrays 12 mana. Happy I got the reprint in the deck. Annihilator 2, whenever an opponent sacrifices a non-token permanent, put that card under the battlefield under your control. So It That Betrays is going to make all of our Annihilator even better, because our opponents have to be careful what they sacrifice, otherwise we get it. I love that It Betrays. It's another fun Eldrazi we have access to. Kozilek's Channeler just taps for 2 mana. Again, in a deck like this where we're cascading, I think this Kozilek's Channeler is going to come into a lot of benefit, helping us ramp up. Well, all right, well, let's get into our Titans. We're playing, we are not playing any Emrakul's. We could play Emrakul Promised End, but it's so expensive. It's like $75 on its own, and I just didn't deem it worth it. We're already putting so much money into the deck if you want to upgrade the Precon. I think our Kozileks and our Ulamogs are a little bit more worth it over the Emrakul, but hey, if you really want to play a true Eldrazi deck, Emrakul would come in. Butcher of Truth, whenever you would cast it, we draw 4. Annihilator 4. And then whenever it is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, its owner shuffles their graveyard into a library. So this is what we refer to as the Shuffle Titans, where when they get put into the graveyard from anywhere, you shuffle it back in your graveyard back into your library. The other Shuffle Titan we're playing is Ulamog the Infinite Gyre. This says whenever you cast it, destroy target permanent, indestructible, Annihilator 4, and then the same ability. Well, probably the most popular true Eldrazi commander is Kozilek the Great Distortion, a 10 mana 12/12. This is when you cast it, if you have fewer than 7 cards in your hand, draw cards equal to the distance. It has Menace. And then the ability that's run a lot of Eldrazi decks, discard a card with mana value X to counter target spell with mana value X. So you keep a bunch of random cards in your hand. Someone plays a 5 mana spell. I can discard a 5 mana value card to counter that spell. Kozilek is a great card on its own. It's a 12/12 menace. It's already hard to deal with on its own, but that ability makes it so good. Palladium Mirror, just tapping for 2 mana. Again, we don't mind cascading into this because it gives us more mana for next turn. Pathrazer of Ulamog, an 11 mana 9/9 with Annihilator 3, and it can't be blocked except by 3 or more creatures. This is great because if your opponents want to deal with it, they are going to have to put a couple things in front of it. Skittering Cicada, I believe, is new for the deck. You may cast colorless spells as though they had flash. Whenever you cast a colorless spell until end of turn, it gets trample and +X/+X, where X is that spell's value. So this is kind of why I also put Vedalken Ori in the deck, is because it kind of helps with a lot of other things. But this is great because we can cast anything we want as though it had flash. We can give Cicada a quick buff if we want to, which I like. And it has flash as well. Sad Robot, Solemn Simulacrum. When it comes in, we get a basic land card, so we can go get a Wastes. And then whenever it dies, we draw a card. So that's great. And again, we don't mind cascading into it. Stonecoil Serpent seems like a great card to start the Cascade train. Comes in with Reach, Trample, and Protection from Multicolored. Gets a bunch of tokens on it. Becomes a big threat to try to deal with. Ulamog's Crusher, 8 mana for an 8/8 Annihilator 2 whenever it attacks each combat of Fable, which we don't really mind because the Annihilator 2 is hard to deal with. Probably my favorite Eldrazi card ever to be released, just because this was my first set in Magic, and I am absolutely in love with this card. And that's Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger, 10 mana for a 10/10. On cast, you exile 2 target permanents. Indestructible, and then whenever it attacks, defending player exiles the top 20 cards of their library. Again, a great target for Helm of the Host. This is a hard card to deal with because you're just nuking 20 of your cards into exile, and it's a 10/10 body you still have to deal with. Yes, it dies to removal, exile removal. Yes, all of our Eldrazi died to exile removal, but it can be so punishing, especially with all those cast triggers. You know, we start with it that betrays or something like that at 10 or 11 or 12, and hopefully we just cascade into a couple big boys on the way down. Void Winnower can be a really fun card to deal with. Your opponents can't cast spells with even mana cost, 0 is even for the purpose of this, and then your opponents can't block with creatures with even converted mana cost. If you've never played against Void Winnower, this card can just end a game because certain people may only have, right, some of the most common removal spells in multicolored are 2 mana, Assassin's Trophy and things like that, can be really good for 2 mana. Reality Shift, there's a lot of really great 2 mana spells, but they can't block with creatures with converted mana cost is 0. It stinks as well because there's a lot of great creatures that have even converted mana cost. So Void Winnower just kind of is going to lock down the game and force people to have the right things. Wandering Archaic's kind of fun. Whenever an opponent casts an instant sorcery, they may pay 2. If they don't, you get to copy it. Why not copy a Rampant Growth or a Cultivate or a bunch of other things? Draw spells. Wandering Archaic's great. And on the back side, it says each player looks at the top 5 cards of their library, reveals a land or instant or sorcery from among them, puts the cards they revealed this way into their hand and the rest on the bottom, and each player gains 3 life. That's if you want to do that. More often than not, you really want that Archaic. Warden of the Geometrics, again, just taps for a colorless, and it has Vigilance. Again, I think these aren't bad. I know we have a ton of artifacts that do that, but I think we want as many as we can so that we can just ramp quickly and just go into the stratosphere. And the amount of mana we have. Wormcoil Engine feels great. No, it doesn't cascade off our commander, but we don't mind cascading into it. Death Touch Lifelink, then when it dies, we get that pair of 3/3s. And then Zenith Chronicler seemed interesting. Whenever a player casts their first multicolored spell, each other player draws a card. Again, it can draw some cards and get us moving as far as that goes. We're playing 3 Planeswalkers. mainly because they're all colorless and they all do really great things. Karn the Great Creator stops our opponent's artifacts from activating their abilities, which could help shut them down. The +1 turns one of our non-creature artifacts into an artifact with the power and toughness equal to its mana value, and it can attack. And then the -2 says choose an artifact you own from outside the game or an exile, reveal it, and put it into your hand. This could get us back an artifact that was in exile, but really more often than not, we're going to plus it up and just try to shut our opponents down. Ugin the Ineffable drops the cost of our colorless spells, which is already great. Exile the top card library face down. Create a 2/2 spirit creature token, and when that token leaves the battlefield, put the exile card into our hand, and the -3 can destroy a permanent that's one or more colors, which is almost everything. Ugin the Ineffable is a very hard planeswalker to deal with because its -3 just literally hits almost anything. And then we had to have fun with Ugin the Spirit Dragon. Again, probably one of the most nefarious old school planeswalkers of all time. +2 deals 3 damage. -X to exile each permanent with converted mana cost X or less that's one or more colors, which will not nuke any of our permanents, but nuke everybody else's. And the -10 says gain 7 life, draw 7 cards, and then puts up to 7 permanents from your hand onto the battlefield. Not a cast on that -10, just put them straight down. I am now just realizing this deck is at 111. I feel like that was a lot of cards. So that is completely on me. I thought I finished editing this deck until right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit this deck. And the deck will be edited down in the description. I'm really sorry, guys. I thought I had done this, and I didn't. So I'm sure somebody's going to already say the deck's at 111 in the comments, and I'm sorry. It's been a long week. But hey, the updated deck is going to be down in the description. Check it out. Let me know what you think, and I will catch you guys next time.